what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. Not quite as live today, but still a stream. Still here with you and for you and by you. So excited to have you here. We've got such a good show kicking off June, kicking off Pride Month. And getting into the summer of rage, as I've been calling it, for no particular reason other than everything is awful and we need to fuck shit up and a revolution. If you are here on YouTube, make sure you like and share the stream right now. Ahora. And if you're here on Twitch, what up? I hope you are subscribed to this channel. Thank you so much. You get that ad-free content. And if you're listening as a podcast, welcome. Thank you so much for pressing play. And thank you so much for your 5-star reviews, you guys. This is a really great way for people to find the show. And I just wanted to shout out a couple of really fun reviews. Killa Carver says, so bitchy, 5 stars. Love her pod. She's funny, smart, and has great guests. Keep it up, and congrats on the baby. Thank you. Tommy D from Cali writes, hits hard, pulls no punches, acerbic wit and unabashed honesty, takes no prisoners on the fascist right. Thank you. And then Free Spirit 1952, Fran is back, super great, 5 stars. Hell yeah. So look, give this podcast 5 stars, write something nice. I will read it on air. We've got such a good show. Comedian Jaye McBride is here breaking down just some little highlights in the world of transphobic America, from boomer comedians that need to just retire to celebrities who are irrelevant and continue to try and make themselves relevant. She's here to break that down with us. Plus, joining me for a bonus bish, we're talking about Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle and their transphobia. You don't want to miss this. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room is where you go to get access to bonus content every single week. But this week is going to be good, y'all. Not that I've seen into the future, but I've seen into the future. So make sure you are a patron, $5, $10, $20, shit, man, whatever you want. And you get a bunch of special perks, free merch, discounts on merch. Obviously, if you want to get merch, bitchuationroom.com. We got 2 different shirts, stickers, totes, etc. It's great. Also, the AMA, which is available for everybody, all the patrons to listen back. Ask Me Anything. We had some great questions. Everything from dating to whether there is a spirit and a soul to what else did we talk about? Oh, running independent candidates. That was an interesting one. So anyway, check that out. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. And reminder, next week there is no show because I will be on a honeymoon. But this week, not only do we have Jaye, but we have Erin Reed, who is a researcher and a reporter who, I mean, she's really an activist around transgender rights, and she tracks all of not only the transphobic and anti-trans legislation around the country, but healthcare resources for transgender people when it comes to informed consent, about transitioning, about getting gender-affirming care, about making sure your medical professionals are properly informing you, that they have your best interests, that they are not grilling you unnecessarily and invading your privacy. So she's joining us later on the show. You don't want to miss this. She's so good. So with that, she works on her organization's called Transformation Projects. Thank you, Paige, for that. And finally, lastly, if you want to tip the show, it is totally welcome. TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. Super appreciate all of your generous little tips there. It means the world. And with that, why don't we get into this? It's going to be a little bit different. We're not going to have a week where I might see what she's bitching about. But she is a transgender comic in Brooklyn first openly transgender comedian to perform at Madison Square Garden, and is a regular at New York City's Comedy Cellar. Please welcome Jaye McBride.
Thank you so much for having. It's great to see you again. Been a while.
I know. We did, when Jaye was working with what is now Abortion Access Front, we did a show in Wisconsin. My first time in Wisconsin.
Right, me too. A lot of cheese curds. Yeah. Great cheese curds.
So sweet. It was a really great event.
Right. By the way, I love your theme song too. After like 2 or 3 minutes, it feels almost like you're about to face Bowser in Mario's pit. You know, it feels like, or maybe like a Mario Kart thing, like he's trying to ram me off. I love it. I love it.
Jaye, first of all, that's shout out to Kevin MacLeod. You know, all his royalty free bangers online. But I've promised the audience and myself that I will get new music this year. And look, y'all. You want new music, you got to tip the goddamn show.
It's cheerful yet ominous.
Yeah.
Right.
What is going on? Yeah, it's
but
it's
no,
very Count Dracula, but like fabulous. I don't know.
Right. But by the way, the greatest thing about Wisconsin, it was a time where we thought like we were fighting to protect abortion, and we won. Right? Or did I miss something? I can't remember.
And we did it.
We did something. Well, we tried. Yeah. The world's going to hell. So that's all.
I mean, and this is like, we've had Liz on multiple times since then in the last couple of years, and ironically had her on like 2 weeks before the announcement of the leak from Alito.
Yeah.
And you know, the struggle remains the same. It's kind of the shit that we all knew was going to happen. It's just a little bit more smelling salts here.
Mm-hmm.
Jaye, I was going to ask you, we do start off the show asking what you're bitching about. And I know this is a pre-record. There might be new things to bitch about in the future. But other than some of the stories we're going to get into, what are you bitching about today?
The heat of the East Coast. That's what I'm bitching about. It's hotter than the balls that Democratic lawmakers seem to be lacking these days. That's how hot it is here. It's disgusting. It's sweaty. And that's what I'm bitching about. Non-stop.
You're in Brooklyn. It's May. It's technically, I mean, it's June when this is running, but it's like
spring.
It's spring. And this is my thing with New York. I'm sorry. Spring lasts for like an afternoon, and then it's hot as balls sweat. Like
exactly.
At 5 a.m. You're like, why is it hot at 5 a.m.? Does it have to be hot this early?
Right. Like I by the time I walk to the subway, like the sweat lines under my boobs, it's like the Shroud of Turin sort of like markings on my shirt. By the time I get there, I'm like, I can't anymore. It's too much.
No, I know. And you have to be kind of always be like sort of the little old lady with like the kerchief who's like dabbing her face because you're just constantly sweating.
Right. And it's like a snot rag / sweat rag. So it's like it's all sorts of, that's how COVID started, I think.
Just one old lady was like, you can use my handkerchief. And then that was it. A pangolin blew its nose in it. Very sweet gesture. But yeah, no, I don't miss the humidity. Now I'm in like, you know, deserty, must drink water at all times. LA on fire, California, LA specifically. But that humidity is something I don't. And then you get so cold in the train because they blast the fucking AC and they still haven't mastered that people are like literally naked in the summertime because it's so hot.
No, it's like the walk-in cooler at like Trader Joe's or something.
Yes.
Sort of thing. And then you walk outside and it's just back and forth. It's
I know they should offer jackets in the subways.
No, I don't think I would want to wear a jacket that the subway offered me.
Communal jacket.
I think I'm okay. I think I would rather get pneumonia. Thanks.
But it does feel like spring's coming earlier and earlier, and I know that like, and summer's coming earlier and earlier, and I know like New York hasn't even had like really bad snow in a while. Like,
no. I mean, I used to live in Albany. We used to get 2 feet at a time sometimes. Like every winter, we would have like at least one gigantic snowstorm that we would have to have a snow emergency. You know, and it's just like lately it's been like,
it's almost like something's changing.
Yeah. It's almost like the whole something about the way the weather is slightly. I don't know what to call it. I don't know. It's like the climate of the earth has somehow changed.
It's crazy. I know we're insane for even saying that.
Right.
Like we're total conspiracy theorists, us and 99% of scientists. But yeah, it is so depressing. So sad. Anywho, But yes, I love to bitch about the humidity. That's disgusting. But we got a few other things to get into.
Right.
So why don't we do this?
That's the tip of the bitchberg.
Oh, it's the tip of the bitchberg over here in this rapidly warming podcast. I've been saving a couple clips for Jay. So this is not the week wear, but sort of the week wear. So Bill Maher, God, he sucks. He still sucks.
He's so bad. He's the worst. He's like, I mean, he's sort of, I think it was like when he had Milo Yiannopoulos on,
Oh yeah,
and they started ranting about trans women. I was like, yeah, that okay. You know what I mean? It's not like a new thing. That was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
I wish I could pull that clip up because I had, I think, deleted that from my brain and forgotten that, oh yeah, they were like, you're a right winger, I'm a so-called liberal, but we can bond over hating trans women.
right. And that the stuff like lately it's another comedian who is too lazy to write actual jokes and just wants to take pot shots at trans people.
Yes.
It's whatever, dude. I can't with you. It's like an old guy bitching because people stopped using rakes. It's just I mean, like, get over it. We've moved forward. It's okay. That's progressive.
That's like me though, because I hate leaf blowers. So like I'm just like, as someone who wants to be an ally but also is against leaf blowers, I don't like that metaphor.
Okay, boomer.
Well, this is my okay boomer segment. And
Perfect.
So obviously in the like in Pride Month, Bill Maher's ramping up all of he's brushing and dusting off all of his old tired trans jokes, and I'm sure before anti-gay jokes as well. And he has thoughts on, oh wow, why there are so many trans people now. Is it just because he's in a rabbit hole, or no, it's something bigger is happening? So here was his recent take on this.
According to a recent Gallup poll, less than 1% of Americans born before 1946, that's Joe Biden's generation, identify that way. 2.6% of boomers do, 4.2% of Gen X, 10.5% of millennials, and 20.8% of Gen Z, which means if we follow this trajectory, we will all be gay in 2054. And then who's going to buy this chair? I'm just saying that when things change this much, this fast, people are allowed to ask, what's up with that? All the babies are in the wrong bodies? Was there a mix-up at the plant, like with Captain Crunch's Oops, All Berries? Yes, part of the rise in LGBT numbers is from people feeling free enough to tell it to a pollster, and that's all to the good. But some of it it's trendy. Penis equals man? Okay, boomer. Remember, the prime directive of every teen is anything to shock and challenge the squares who brought you up. If you attend a small dinner party of typically very liberal, upper-income Angelenos, it is not uncommon to hear parents who each have a trans kid having a conversation about that. What are the odds of that happening in Youngstown, Ohio? If this spike in trans children is all natural, why is it regional? Either Ohio is shaming them or California is creating them.
All right, there was a lot there.
Yeah. First of all, the fact that he was next to Adam Carolla tells you everything that he needs. I mean, Adam Carolla is the biggest piece of garbage too. He like going on tour with Dennis Prager. I mean,
God, are you serious?
Oh, you didn't know that? Oh yeah. I mean, but I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were saying
PragerU has done a couple of videos on Newsbroke on like some stuff. It's just very funny. That's so on-brand and disgusting.
100%.
Okay, and the fact that he wasn't, no one's laughing at these jokes really, except for, again, the audience that's barked off the Santa Monica Pier and like begged to, like, be like, we got free popcorn and soda, please come watch Bill Maher. But that last line, I think, and we'll go back, it was perhaps the most egregious. Either California is creating them or Ohio is shaming them. Ohio is shaming them.
Right.
That's the
Ohio's
answer.
still, yeah. 250 bills at least, have been put out this year to try and keep kids from transitioning. Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, is absolutely won the election basically on a platform of anti-abortion, anti-trans. I mean, they absolutely are. And also, like when you say 20% of the population are LGBT, it's like, you know, there are bi people. The fact that people are more open to being bi is a lot. To assume that now this is all trans is
that's what I was gonna say.
Give me a break. Like, you're not even close, man.
No, he gives this. He starts off with that graph and showing how everyone's going to be gay by 2080,
Right.
and then immediately singles out trans people, essentially conflating like those two groups. And you're absolutely right. It's sort of how I feel about like race and the way that the like Pew and how Pew research is interpreted. Not Pew. How our census is interpreted, which is that like the takeaway is always there are fewer white people, but that's only if you define white through a one drop rule of POC, meaning if you're still defining whiteness through a purity, yeah, there are fewer white people, but if you define whiteness as not through racial purity, meaning some people are a little bit white, meaning there are biracial people, there are far more white people because they're fucking setting up franchises. There are people like me who are half white, a third white. Like there's so many more white people, but whiteness and race are never conceived that way. And it's sort of similar to what you're saying about sexuality. It's like you could be bi, you're also saying there's just more, like there's more straight people too. Like they're still straight. They're straight and gay. I don't know. Right. It's just very, it's such a, and I know obviously that's not a 1-to-1 correlation, but it's like,
no, but yeah, no. And same with like there, I think like you could say, I could see where there may be some kids in high school who are like, they have a friend who's non-binary. They're like, yeah, I want you to call me non-binary for a while. I want to go by that. Maybe, sure. You know, and maybe it is, but which, even if it is a phase, it harms nobody.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Say there's like a child who claims to be non-binary and is it? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, like that's not what's going on. That's not exactly what's happening. Let's say it is. That just means they go by different pronouns for a year during the phase.
Yeah.
That's what you're upset about for 1 year, and they're fine. They're still happy and healthy. It bothers me so much, and I think one of these fears that people have about trans people, about how like more people are coming out, like, well, what about all the people who detransitioned, you know, who would transition like from female to male and then transition back? And first of all, that means they weren't really trans, you know. But right. Let's say 5% of people transition back. Just it's not 5%. It's not. It's way less.
It's less. Mm-hmm.
It's way less. Let's say 5%. People are also misdiagnosed as having cancer. That doesn't mean we stop looking for ways to diagnose cancer and treating cancer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think they look at this like
right, exactly. No, we have to take away all cancer treatments. No more chemo for anyone. No, especially chemo under 18. Mm-mm.
Right. And it's not even 5%. It's a fraction. It's a fraction, but it's just people just like, if the only thing that says is we need to get better at diagnosing people who are trans and helping people who are trans.
Yeah.
You know, excuse me a second.
No, and I was going to say that it reminds me, I will draw another correlation to how people speak about race, which when he says, when things change this much, this fast. Now that line is a line that has been used by Tucker Carlson to speak about the growing number of people of color in this country. Specifically, basically to float the Great Replacement theory. The idea that, yeah, people of color are coming for white people. And it's this like rhetorical, like, look, I'm not saying I'm against trans people or trans rights. I'm just saying, don't you think this is all changing a little much? And that statement to me excuses so much violence and brutality and like
Mm-hmm.
allows, it's basically like, oh yeah, no, I know someone was brutalized and I know, yeah, maybe there was a racially motivated or a hate crime over here. But how can you expect any different when, it's just changing so fast?
Right. And I'm just asking questions. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you piece of shit. You're a piece of garbage. You're going to hack bullshit with your even what do you call a special, like adulting or something like that?
Oh God,
Or
I don't
something which
know.
I don't know. People stopped saying 5 years ago. So I mean, he talks about this thing like I haven't changed. I haven't changed. It's the Democrats that have changed. It's liberals that have changed. Like no, society is changing. That's literally what society does. Like it changed from 100 years ago. If we didn't change from 100 years ago, think where we would be. So of course,
Yes.
society progresses. So
No, it's so funny that he's like, because he's saying the okay boomer, blah, blah, in jest, but like he proves himself to be an out of touch boomer every single week. You're basically referring to another monologue that he had where he was like, I haven't changed, society's changed. It's like, yeah, bro, and you change with
yes.
it. You like watch the fucking Sex and the City reboot if you can stomach it. Just look at how Miranda is suddenly not cool anymore. It's like the one storyline that I like
Right.
really
She
like where I'm like,
changed.
no, exactly. She didn't change. She's learning. She's trying not to be a Karen. She's like figuring out what like systemic racism is. And, it's like, yeah, that's what you are, Bill.
Right.
You're a
100%.
Miranda in 2022. Like you're trying to figure out like that the world doesn't revolve around you.
Right.
For the first time. And you've never had to do that because
No,
you've had it
100%.
made in the shade. And I will just say that he also like actually names someone that I know by name, um, which is really fucked up in doing like essentially an anti-trans segment and then naming the name of a trans person and kind of putting a target on their back.
Right.
Who he's a lawyer, he's like in the public, he's public facing, whatever. But he does this in this like, he's like, oh, the Pride is so representative this year. And he's like, they're trans people, they're lesbians, there's this, there's that. You know what there aren't? No gay men. And he's like, what the fuck do you care if there's gay men? Like, also, he could be more specific if he knew he could be like, there's no cis gay men, right? Like,
Right.
again, conflating gender and sexuality. But like, again, and then this is like, again, with the hierarchies, the obsession with creating gendered sexuality hierarchies, racial hierarchies, and every time you incorporate new groups of marginalized people into your understanding, like these folks always think that means we're forgetting about cis gay men.
Right. And I mean, you sort of need to look at the history of the Pride Parade and realize like it's almost all gay men. like going through the years, like how many like that was where you saw gay men, because gay men were the ones who were punished the most for during Stonewall, like it was gay men at the time,
exactly.
Although obviously like now you look back, you'd be like that person was probably trans, couldn't transition given the circumstances. But I mean, it's like you look at the history of it, it's like, of course you want to represent everyone all along the way. It's not like it's just like I'm done with you and I'm moving here. It's just here's a group that was underrepresented in the past, and we're representing that person because of what they do. Or we don't care. We know they're part of our community, and we're not trying to pigeonhole that person as a certain identity. We're just saying you're great for the community, period.
Right. I think there's a certain like class tone deafness that I think a lot of like, obviously there's class tone deafness. It's fucking Bill Maher, but like, understanding the ways that the Pride Parade has been co-opted, and definitely while it started off, with gay men being, yes, brutalized at Stonewall and like has radical roots, that like, especially even where it took place and where Stonewall is in the West Village is totally gentrified. And it's like lots of kind of wealthy, gay men who, there is not as much of a space for like young, queer kids of color or like, trans people. And like, so it is like, there are also ways that Pride has become, again, co-opted and corporatized, and there are gradations. Like the LGBTQ community is not a monolith, but that's completely lost on him. So it's funny because like you could see his argument being made by like a really elitist, like brownstone owning,
Right.
like gay guy on the Pride committee being like, what about us, you know, and
Right,
our
right.
representation? It's like,
100%.
and no one would take that person seriously.
Right, 100%. And there was something else. He was on. I don't know. Someone was doing a show. It was like a pot show. It was a show about weed, you know. And he's like, he was talking to the host, you know, like while she's smoking. He's like, and he's trying to act cool, you know. He's sitting back in that chair with someone like that, his grandmother or his granddaughter's age. Like, yeah, but now society, like pregnant men, and she's just like, yeah, pregnant men. All right.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the deal with that? It's like,
bro, was he high too?
Probably, but
he's like trying to insert. Can you imagine being? I just see. I'm someone who, like, when I smoke, I become way more empathetic. But like other people tell me that, like, no, right wingers are super on board, obviously, with weed, and somehow it doesn't make them more empathetic. But I love that, like, conversations I have when I'm high, which are like aliens, bro. Like, that other people are like, yeah, but like pregnant men, like using it as an excuse to just talk shit about trans people.
Yeah,
like,
it's like he was sitting.
Never
on
occurred to me. What a waste of a high.
He's like, I'm gonna blow her away with my insight. Transgender pregnant men.
And he and she was like, yeah.
She's like, yeah. I think she did one of these, like
some snaps.
You know, it was some weird, like, you know, like I don't know.
He didn't. He went to go like look this up on Urban Dictionary, which, by the way, love snaps as a comic. Please don't snap in the audience.
Yeah, we don't need snaps. Oh, although if it's shrieking, go stick with the snaps.
But, sure.
But
shrieking, heckling, laughing is the sweet spot of reactions.
Yeah, that's sort of what you go for in general and historically through millennia. So let's stick with that, boomers. Okay.
I'm talking about young people, but yes. Oh my God, anyway. I don't have to talk about the worst.
I don't get it. It's like when you're at a comedy club, like and you're in the audience, like that's a normal reaction. That's how we know.
Laugh.
Right. Like,
I was at a bad show in the audience. There was this one guy in the front row, and he was just like not looking at me, and he wouldn't laugh. He'd just be like, and I was just like, oh my God, dude. Why are you in the front row? Why did I even? And then the woman next to him wasn't laughing either. She was just gripping her book. They had come out of like a book read, like some kind of book club nearby. And this was like in Echo Park, kind of like a, hipstery spot in LA. And she was just like that was her face. And I think she was like gripping like Audre Lorde or something woke, something cool.
Right.
And she's just like, can I laugh? It's not okay. And then her friend, snap. It
would have been better if like he was snapping and she would do like this, or they each have their own personal hand signal.
Twinkling in activist spaces. All right, well, let's move to one other. This is a highlight of sort of shameful takes from within, I guess, maybe within the trans community and outside of it. So that was Bill Maher. But Caitlyn Jenner, maybe off of her, I don't know, loss for governorship of California, pitiful loss.
Right.
Her inability to fit in every time she goes to right-wing conferences, she's always trolled. And yet she keeps on throwing the left and other trans people or liberals, anybody, keeps on throwing them under the bus. And so here she was most recently, Paige maybe confirm where this was, but here's what she had to say about kind of a similar tack to Bill Maher on how everyone is trans now.
It was at Costco yelling at the cashier.
Yeah, definitely waiting in line for a sample. So that was from the Pivot podcast, hosted by former NFL stars Channing Crowder, Fred Taylor, and Ryan Clark.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I dyslexics should never learn how to read, apparently. Is that what I don't understand. Is that what's going on? What an idiot. What an asshole.
It's so amazing to compare. First of all, she basically took credit for dyslexia being commonly spoken about because, not to brag, but it went viral.
Right. Well, yeah. And also the fact that like it was now, it's too far. It's too far. Too many people are dyslexic. Wait, this is too much. I'm special, not you.
Yeah, there's too much literacy and too many people. It's like glasses, like once I started wearing glasses, then everyone wanted to start wearing them. Like,
Right,
oh my God, are you even blind? Like,
Right.
can you read it's too many kids can read the board now.
Yeah, I want to be dyslexic.
Who doesn't want to be dyslexic? Everyone wants to be.
What an asshole. What
dyslexic.
A fucking asshole. I mean, like, yeah, the fact that no one talked about it, and now, like, even saying, like, people who are suffering from gender dysphoria, maybe make it so having gender dysphoria is no longer something you suffer with. It's something you can openly discuss and be treated about, and what an asshole. I just, every time, like, someone talks about, Lindsey Graham being closeted, they're like, oh, maybe Lindsey Graham is trans. I'm like, no, we took the last asshole. This one has to go to the gays. The gays, you guys need to step up and take this one because we took the last one. It's like
so, well, and I wanted to ask you, I mean, her point initially, it's like, wasn't all that bad, the overblown nature of, basically trans issues as being, in the right's mind. It's like 80% of people. And again, you even see Bill Maher, who's not on the right. I mean, not openly on the right, a closeted Republican who essentially, again, echoed the same sort of the stats essentially, or conflating, saying, there's just, everyone's trans now, essentially. And so I think that was a good point of like, we're making this a bigger issue than the number of people it affects, but still the people who it affects need assistance, need treatment, need to feel accepted, need to not be brutalized or stigmatized, and all of those important things. But it's also a little bit of like, I feel like she's claiming like people are a little bit similarly like, well, when I was talking about dyslexia, it's a little bit like, well, I almost was waiting for her to be like, and then since I've transitioned, like, I think a lot of people have transitioned.
Right. I'm sort of a role model. I'm kind of a big deal. You may see me on the show, keeping up with the Kardashians. No, it really bothers me. Like the fact that, yes, it's overblown is perfect. Yes, of course it is. Of course, like, I think it was West Virginia, they made a law banning trans high schoolers and middle schoolers from competing in sports. And then they're like, is this a problem? Do you know of a trans person competing in sports in the state? And no, of course not. Of course not. No, because there wasn't one. And most people who, even if someone in middle school is transitioning at that young age, they're probably way shittier at sports than anyone else. I mean, like really, like, for every, like, give me a break. Like,
it doesn't mean you have like superhuman strength and that you're suddenly an incredible athlete.
Exactly. And honestly, if Leah Thomas was able to transition in middle school, she would not be dominating. Let's be honest. This wouldn't even be a discussion about any of this stuff. So why don't you make it so we have more kids who can transition? But no, they're
Leah Thomas, who's a swimmer and who's like very whatever, competed in the NCAA, I guess. Is that what it is? And
yeah,
has won awards.
Yeah.
So I think Leah Thomas is a really interesting example because people are like, it's essentially like, it also pushes these buttons around like, okay, are you okay with trans athletes not just participating, but winning?
Right.
Right. And I think the answer has to be yes.
Yeah. Right? I mean, people make it seem like, what about all these trans athletes? No, one. It's one. And all of the NCAA, it's one that's winning. And so, I mean, stop making it like a big deal now. And like, if it were up to me, it's like people would be able to transition before puberty and not have to deal with this. But the fact that people are bitching about this, and I'm like, by the way, if you're upset about Leah Thomas, you better not be voting for Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. That's all I'm saying. Like that's it. That's it. That's the rule.
Oh, it's so true. Well, can I ask you, and just to get a little bit more personal, with the amount of, hundreds and hundreds of bans on, trans kids playing sports, to not being allowed to access gender affirming care before the age of 18, to not even being able to speak about issues. Like, how does that, reflecting on your transition, reflecting on your life, like, how would that have impacted you, and how do you feel, just getting your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, I mean, I didn't transition until after I was 18. I was well past that. And I mean, the fact that it's open now and available it's literally can be a lifesaver for children. It literally could be a lifesaver. That there are some things that I'm sure we're doing wrong and we need to work on, because it is fairly new. If you think it's been around forever, but it's fairly new that we're actually addressing it as something more than just like a mental health problem.
Right.
And there are some things like I think we need to treat like kids who are born assigned male that are trans differently than the ones who are assigned female. I don't think it can be a cookie cutter approach, especially since testosterone is just so powerful, and so there are some things for sure, but I mean, like, to cut it off for everyone and it's incredibly upsetting to me. It really gets to me. I can't imagine what it's like to be a child that like, I can't imagine what it would have been like for me to have an opportunity to be who I knew I was this whole time, and then have that yanked away by the government because they think they know better than I do.
Yeah.
It's infuriating to me. And look, there are some things like I think with like it's a topic of, like, I think, does Leah Thomas have an advantage over other? I think yes. I think she probably does. I think if you compete on a level with men, I think maybe the NCAA should be like, you know what, if you compete in the men's division, maybe you're disqualified or something. But there's definitely an advantage, and that's one thing to talk about. But now imagine you're a 6-year-old or 6th grader who transitioned, and the teacher says to them, you're not allowed to play soccer with the rest of the kids. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, how you want to ostracize this group even more?
Right.
It's infuriating to me.
I know, as someone who's like not an athlete, but like it's if I wasn't able to do drama because of my gender identity or sexuality, I would flipped out. Like, I would have had nothing. I would have had to do sports, and that would have sucked for me because I'm not an athlete.
Right.
But Jay, we will see you in the bonus episode for more. But I did just want to shout out, you are going to be opening for Amy Schumer this later this summer, and you're writing on Inside Amy Schumer, and you are like touring and recording an album pretty soon.
Yeah, July 19th.
Please plug.
Yeah, July 19th, I'll be Union Hall in Brooklyn, and that'll come out at some point. But I'll be recording, and I'll have 2 shows if you want to get tickets for that. I'll be like you said, Amy Schumer, and I'll just be hanging out, sweating, being angry about it.
Oh my God, July 19th?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's exciting. Okay, so everybody, follow Jay on the socials. Let's see, I'm throwing them up here. Yeah, Jaye McBride on Twitter, Jaye McBride, and get tickets if you're in New York. That'd be great. Fuck yeah. And then we will see you in the bonus. We're going to talk about comedy specifically. We're going to talk about what it is that is just compelled people like Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle to consistently target trans people in some of their just the worst joke writing.
Is there nothing else going on? I just, but yeah.
No.
I look forward to talking about
literally nothing else. Thank you so much, Jay. Take really good care. Thanks for watching all those clips with idiots. Clips with idiots. It's a new segment here on the Bitchuation Room. And thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for your super chats, which I'm assuming are coming in, just flowing, just making it rain super chats, because mama's gonna be a mama very soon. And with that, I am super excited to actually, Jay and I talked about it, but let's talk about those bills that are coming down the pike. Let's talk about the political atmosphere and what is going on nationally in terms of transgender rights, transgender children, and how they are systematically being targeted by the right in this country. This is the Sitch. And joining us for the Sitch to talk about all of the anti-trans legislation that is being passed one after another in states across this ridiculous country that we somehow still choose to live in, because God damn it, where else are we gonna go? She is a legislative and policy researcher for the Transformations Project. She's a fierce advocate for transgender rights and trans youth. She also created the largest map of hormone therapy clinics for transgender people. Please welcome Erin Reed.
Hello, how's it going?
It's okay. I mean, things could be better. But I'm so happy to have you here. This is the beginning of Pride Month, and not a lot to be proud about as just an American who's not in the LGBTQ plus community, but an ally. Personally, I'm feeling pretty shitty. But I also am so thankful to have people like yourself who are tracking what's been going on across the country. And because I think we kind of conflate, it's all awful, it's all terrible, and look away, even though this has really important impacts on people's lives right now. Just to bring, Erin knows this, but to bring everybody else up to speed, just in this year, 300 anti-LGBTQ plus laws introduced in the US. We're 6 months in, not even. They fall into broad buckets. A lot of them are aimed at transgender Americans, specifically banning trans youth from playing sports according to their gender identity, and then stopping gender-affirming care. And I wanted to focus on those two things first, Erin. What did you make? Because I've been really interested in the fact that in certain states, I believe they're banning basically trans girls in sports, outright, to so-called protect sports. But recently, the governor of Indiana vetoed a transgender sports ban, as did the governor of Kansas. In Kansas, the legislature tried to override. I believe Kansas was successfully overrid the veto. Can you clarify that?
Kansas was a successful veto override, and it was successful by the margin of a single vote, which is just mind-blowing.
If you didn't think that state legislatures mattered and wresting them from the hands of Christian nationalist extremists, were you surprised by those governors' moves, given that they are Republican governors and they blocked these bans, basically stating fairness, which is, I think, what we've all been saying?
So yes, I was a little bit surprised, although it's been really interesting. This has been something that has come up in multiple states this year. So for instance, Utah, the governor of Utah also vetoed their sports ban. The veto was overridden, but the governor of Utah, a Republican, wrote actually a really just astoundingly well-written defense of transgender youth within his state. And it seems like what's really hammering the point across to some of these Republican governors is that they don't want families to be forced to flee their states, and that's what these bills do. And for whatever reason, like, that's come up a few times, that like we don't want people to be forced out of our state. And unfortunately, it hasn't worked that way in every state. There are many states where these bills did pass and the Republican governors did sign them. But it's nice to see that like not all of them are just falling into line.
Sure. Why do you think that is, in terms of not wanting people to leave? Is it just like it's way better? I mean, is it a business move? Is it a we want to be safe and a good state for families move? These are also states that have really lax gun laws, for example.
And I think that there's a mixture here. I think that on one hand, you could go into the sort of like capitalistic analysis of this, and like, are companies going to leave my state? Are people going to find my state appealing to move to, especially tech industry, et cetera? Or you could perhaps say that maybe some of them do feel a little bit of guilt whenever somebody leaves their state. I don't know.
What's in their hearts?
Right. I mean,
ask you. Yes.
But I think that it's I hope that more can make that kind of a decision to make sure that like trans youth aren't forced out of their states, because it's really it's unfortunate to see it happen. And this comes up more in like the healthcare type bills, because whenever you mentioned like the lax laws and the lax gun control, stuff like that. This has come up before in some of these states where they simply say that they don't want to regulate it. And so, I mean, God bless them, awesome. I would love for them, bless you. I would love for them to, stick by that particular principle on this particular topic. That'd be great.
Right.
Unfortunately, most of them do not.
And in just sticking with sports for a little bit longer, like what do you feel like the impact on trans teens is banning them, barring them from playing sports according to their gender identity? What does that do?
It singles them out. And one thing that doesn't get talked about enough, especially with the sports bans, is that in most of these states, there are less than a dozen trans athletes. In many states, there are only one or two. And so, you have states that are creating these panels that will literally kind of meet and get hired to analyze whether or not a person is a man or a woman, quote unquote. And they're going to be paid, millions of dollars just literally because they have two trans athletes in their state. That's the case of Utah. And so
that's what they're spending money on, not healthcare.
Yeah, like for a couple kids that literally are playing little league or soccer, or we're not talking about somebody that's dominating a sport. We were talking about people that are most likely just playing in a football game or playing baseball or softball.
Right, absolutely. I mean, and to say nothing of like, I'm thinking of the impact of also, if you do like sports, I never did, much more of a theater kid, gonna be honest with you, but like, given the amount of ostracization, of like suicidal ideation among trans youth already, of bullying, et cetera, sports you think would be such an important outlet and community to actually have. Good move, Kitty. And it knows. And so to take that away is for, again, you're saying like a couple of trans teens who also play sports. And then you're saying you defend women's sports, supposedly. It's really, really laughable at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
And obviously, and interestingly, the way that patriarchy works would have it that no one cares about trans men in men's sports.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You never hear anything about trans men. And it's, in my opinion, it's because, and you hear, this is often in like all aspects of how transgender people are discussed. Trans men are often left out. Trans masculine people are often entirely left out, because of the fact that, they like to paint transgender people as predators, and they see much more success doing that by focusing on trans feminine people rather than trans masculine people for whatever reason.
Right. Well, let's go to some of the stuff that you really track, and specifically in terms of creating a database for hormone therapy clinics that actually practice gender-affirming care, which is hormone therapy is part of that, and that do something called informed consent. Why? Maybe we're skipping a few steps, but why is informed consent so important for trans people or non-binary people when it comes to seeking affirming care?
So informed consent is extremely important. For me, it made the difference as to whether or not I was going to transition, I think. I had a fairly typical like transgender experience as a kid in terms of like in the 90s, I grew up. I had a fairly solid idea of what my gender identity was. I repressed it because I was living in the South. And whenever I had originally learned about being transgender, I discovered that at the time in the 90s, you had to go through something called real life experience, which means that before you're even allowed to start hormone therapy or anything like that, you basically have to dress as your gender and present as your gender out in public for like 2 years. That has become very much not in practice in the last 10 years or so because of the fact that that would often single transgender people out for much abuse and targeting and violence because, the transgender person had no ability to change their appearance, their hormonal profile, and often it would very much cause a lot of trouble for that person. So the reason I mention this is because I had held off on my own transition because that seemed like a terrifying prospect. And it wasn't until I turned around 30 years old, which was 3 years ago for me, so I'm dating myself here, that I learned that informed consent was now a major way that they did things. And so informed consent, what informed consent is you go to a doctor, you let them know your gender identity, you let them know that you're transgender. They'll give a very basic psychological test / battery that essentially covers, are there other things going on in your life that we need to be aware of while we're treating you? But it's not meant to be a gatekeeping process. And they, as you are a consenting adult, they let you know the risks and benefits and the studies. You sign off on it, and they'll track your hormonal profile. They will treat you. They will give you your gender-affirming care. What's so important about this is that if it's not for informed consent, you often have to go through thousands of dollars in therapy sessions, and you have to go through many gatekeeping processes. You have to go to endocrinologists. And given the state of healthcare in the United States, that's very difficult for a lot of people, especially people in poverty, or people that are students, or people that don't know how to navigate the medical system. And so informed consent bypasses all of that and allows a transgender person to transition at their own pace, guided by medical professionals.
Right. And that's huge, because otherwise it's left up to some, I'm just understanding this myself, like some sort of entity or body called, is it the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, that decides whether or not you should or can or deserve hormone therapy because you are or are not like trans enough, so to speak?
Yes. WPATH, yes, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. And, WPATH has been in some ways good for transgender rights and acceptance, but also in some ways regressive. And so it wasn't until very recently that WPATH started allowing for informed consent. I know that their newest guidelines that they're putting out does explicitly allow for informed consent hormone therapy treatment. But yes, it is the gatekeeping organization, and there are still doctors that are several standards of care behind in terms of following the WPATH recommendations. And in fact, most states in the United States are way behind in terms of coverage of medical care for transgender people. So for instance, things like hormone therapy, gender reassignment surgery are all that most insurances cover. But now in the standards of care now, they should be covering things like voice therapy or hair removal or masculinization and facial feminization surgery, various kinds of surgeries that a few standards of care ago they didn't cover, but now they do.
Mm-hmm. As someone who pays out of pocket for Obamacare, I'm like, I want all of it.
Exactly.
Be like, give me these premiums. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get everything.
Exactly. I want the Cadillac.
Exactly. No. And of course, all that is if you do have access to healthcare or can afford it. Let's fucking do away with access if you can afford it. But so you're saying essentially that with informed consent, you go in, you can speak to a medical professional, and they're not going to immediately sort of raise an eyebrow or ask you, a myriad of questions, or say, well, come back, almost like the way abortion is criminalized. Come back in 2 years and tell me how you're feeling, and then we'll discuss.
And there are very much people that go through that process if it were not for informed consent. The amount of stories that I hear on Twitter, people messaging me, transgender people that had gone to a therapist for 3 years before they realized that their therapist was simply gaslighting them and holding back their ability to transition.
Jesus.
It's more common than you might think. Yeah.
Right. And so all those barriers didn't seem to be enough for a lot of Republican-led states, of course, when it comes to gender-affirming care, and specifically with minors. Alabama's made it a felony recently to provide any gender-affirming care. You can get 10 years in prison for doing so. I believe, what are the other states that have followed suit?
Yes. So Alabama is the big one. Arkansas was the first one. Arkansas actually did it last year. Although the Arkansas ban was not a felony provision, it still bans gender-affirming care. It removes the doctor's licenses. The other states are Texas, because Texas is a weird one because there's no law on the books that says that you can't provide gender-affirming care in Texas. However, just in February, Attorney General Paxton wrote a letter to Greg Abbott saying that under the Texas child abuse guidelines, gender-affirming care is child abuse. the child abuse guidelines say nothing about gender affirming care, but they're basically interpreting them as they see fit to now crack down on the parents of transgender youth in Texas and to attempt to literally take their kids away. So Texas is the other one, other than Arkansas.
It's amazing to me that these are some of the same states that are basically completely doing away with abortion in every single case, including incest. You're like, oh, cool. That's not necessarily child abuse, but supporting your trans kid is. Got it.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the linkage between abortion rights and transgender rights is extremely strong, even to the point that the same organizations that are pushing for abortion rollbacks are the same organizations that are pushing for trans rights rollbacks, and they're using the same arguments. So just in Ohio, for instance, last week, there was a lawyer from the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is one of the largest organizations that is currently trying to ban transgender rights in the United States, as well as trying to ban abortion care in the United States. And he literally said that you can pass this law because of fetal or ultrasound bills, and use the same defense logic behind it. Like, he had like some sort of legal rationale and said, they're just the same. You can pass them the same. And I'm like, okay, so you're just basically admitting that the linkage is there,
Well, let's stay on that for just a second. Can I ask you, I think sort of callously, a lot of people are like, well, why would the gay community, the LGBTQ plus community, the trans community, why would they care about, Roe v. Wade being overturned? Obviously, you've heard the Bill Maher dum-dum clip going around, but actually the links between the attacks on Roe and the attacks on abortion rights, and the attacks on trans people are really linked. If and when Roe v. Wade is overturned, how do you see that impacting also trans people, in addition to the fact that trans people can get pregnant, number one, but also just what does that mean for bodily autonomy, for privacy, all those kinds of questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, beyond the basic fact that, yes, transgender people do get pregnant, and they are also much more likely to suffer from things like poverty and inability to escape a state, and inability to just move out. So just by virtue of that, the LGBT population and trans people in particular are disproportionately impacted by laws that are focused on abortion rights and reproductive health, and also contraception, being another major deal for a lot of transgender people. But beyond that, some of the very foundations that Roe v. Wade is built off of kind of spiderwebs out into all kinds of rights that we have. Rights to marry who we see fit, rights to engage in whatever sexual activity that we see fit with a consenting adult. And whenever they start to chip away at fundamental rights, it seems very easy for them to simply move on to other associated rights that are based on some of the same rationale. I can tell you, for instance, once Roe v. Wade gets repealed, there are states that are currently considering passing laws that make it illegal to leave the state to seek an abortion. And this is becoming a big deal. There are other states that are reacting to this. Yes. The same people that are using those arguments are also now proposing laws to make it illegal to take a transgender kid out of the state to seek gender-affirming care. And so it's all interconnected, and it's all part of a patriarchal system to define us by our reproductive capability and to use that to establish a gender hierarchy. And that's how it works.
It's so simple. That's all they want. The gender hierarchy. Fuck that shit. I'm sorry. I'm just
I know it's real.
I know. And you're just like, wow. It's gotta suck to be just like a cis, het, rich, white, old dude. I mean, it's great, but it's like, why? What the fuck are you clinging to, bro? I get so mad.
That they have to force this so strongly shows how weak it really is,
Yes, that's exactly right. That is exactly it, Erin. I think that is the crux. That when I get down about this kind of stuff, I come back to the fact that, oh no, this is the last gasp of them, these fucks trying to hold on and sort of institute hierarchies when we're imploding them, and people are living in their true selves, how they want to live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. does it mean anything to you that, let's say, 19 states are saying, run by Democrats, they're like, we want to be refuges for people, trans people, for their families who want to come get gender affirming care, and we will not extradite them to Alabama. Do you feel like that is enough, or is that comfort?
And it's funny that you mentioned enough, because only one state has passed that so far. Connecticut is the only state to pass it. A lot of them have talked about it, but even in very heavily democratically controlled states, we're still waiting. California, we're waiting to see if it comes out of California. New York, it's proposed. I don't think it's had a committee hearing yet. It seems like it's kind of sitting on the back burner. I don't think it's enough. I do think that it's good. And I do think that we need, one of the number one things that we need, because a lot of people that live in blue states, they always ask me, it's like, what can I do about what's going on in Alabama? And I tell them, I'm like, don't forget about Alabama, but look at your backyard, because there's not a single state in the country that is perfect on LGBTQ rights right now. And, even in your most liberal of states, you still have issues. And so pushing back is important. I think that it's important to declare that, not only are you not just going to sit around, but you're going to erect a wall, you're going to erect a defense against this from proceeding. But is it enough? No, I don't think it's enough, because even if all of these states declare safe state laws, and they should, I truly believe that they should protect anybody that exits Alabama and Texas to flee to another state. And I hate that we have refugees in our own country for this, but any state that does this, the fact that the people that flee are the ones that have the money to flee. And you can't get everybody out of Texas. I read a statistic that there's probably somewhere around 110,000 transgender people in Texas. Most of them probably, a good number of them are transgender youth. You're not going to get all of those people out of Texas. They're going to be forced to stay there. And so we need more. I mean, we need so much more. Maybe we need some of these states that are passing these laws, maybe we need resettlement programs to where whenever they do get to these states, they're given resources to where they can exist for a little while. Maybe we need, some sort of a national effort. I mean, we need a lot. We need so much.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, the abortion fight, it feels like it's codifying Roe. It feels like it's even saying the word abortion out loud. In terms of trans rights and protection, how can something like the federal government go farther? I mean, they're not doing much. They're on recess. They get back tomorrow, BT dubs. But what, laying out sort of your playbook on the national level, what would be the right course of action?
I mean, the federal government at this point is like a block of wood. It's not moving. It's just sitting there. I struggle about what can we do federally, because it feels like the federal government is absolutely broken. And it's we're at the point where we're kind of all fending for ourselves in our states right now. And the people, those of us that are living in more regressive states are having to fend for themselves a whole lot more. I think that there are executive things that can be done. I think that they are things that, for one reason or another, the Biden administration has not wanted to do, but I think that they should do, especially in the state of Texas. For instance, they do control the purse strings around Child Protective Services. And if Texas is going to weaponize Child Protective Services to take transgender children from their parents, then I don't think that our federal dollar should pay for that. Yes. And, I think that for whatever reason, there's been reluctance to pull those strings. But at this point, they've already decided that they're going to do it. And so...
Can we just talk more specifically? Because, it seems like there are a lot of bad faith arguments obviously being made by an anti-trans lobby right now. And this is pre-recorded, but, you've got a bill, HB 454 in Ohio, that's being debated, which, again, blocks healthcare professionals from providing gender-affirming treatment, hormone replacement therapy, reconstructive surgery, puberty blockers to trans kids. And its author, the author of the bill is a organization called SAFE, or the bill is called SAFE, but it's who's behind it? Tell me who's behind that.
So the bill is called SAFE, the SAFE Act, the Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act, which is its own Orwellian thing, which I can go into a million times. I've already done it before. The people that are behind it are the American Principles Project, the Alliance Defending Freedom, and another just general group of these organizations that have banned around trying to ban gender-affirming care for trans youth. For instance, there's one called the American College of Pediatricians, which is literally only set up to confuse the legislators with the American Association of Pediatrics, because the American Association of Pediatrics is a professional organization with 11,000 doctors. The American College of Pediatricians is a conservative organization with 200, pediatricians and also lobbyists. And so, you have all these organizations that are behind it, but mainly the American Principles Project. And, I want to really, in particular, focus in on the APP because of the very cynical way that they've done this, that they've managed to pass some of these laws this year. You see, in 2016, a lot of people will remember the North Carolina bathroom ban. Whenever they banned transgender people from using the bathroom, that cost North Carolina around $3 billion because many companies pulled out of North Carolina. The NBA pulled their All-Star game. Very famously, several games were pulled, several concerts were pulled. And so the American Principles Project is on record. There's a news article where they discuss this with a reporter as saying that this time they specifically chose pro-business states to launch their laws in. So Texas, Florida, places that had very few corporate regulations, as well as they decided to wait a few years and then target several states at the same time to make it harder for companies to put pressure on the states. And so they kind of just... Because
the company is just so entrenched in that state?
Yeah.
Or got it.
Yeah, because there's so many tax breaks in the state, the company doesn't want to leave. We've seen what's going on in Texas. There are still just as many companies in Texas. Corporations have been absolutely silent and they're not doing anything. And, whenever Pride Month comes along and we see all of these companies paint their logos in rainbow flags, it's going to be the most infuriating thing to me.
Absolutely. And for me, and I think it's okay I think we should put these issues together. I think we're at a moment where we have to look at this. We have to look at abortion rights. We have to look at the attack on the LGBTQ community as part of the same fight. But I keep on waiting for corporations to be like, I'm fucking leaving Texas because this is a line about what you do with your body and how you live your life. And it's about freedom. And we're standing against that. And it's like, if Disney is doing more than some corporations, and I'm sorry, the smallest round of applause for them, because before they were trying to work with Florida to soften the blow of the Don't Say Gay bill. I don't fucking trust Disney at all. But I'm just saying, we need to make sure that it is untenable for them to sort of continue to do business as usual when there are such discriminatory, life-threatening policies. And I guess I wanted to ask you about also, children and people under 18 and what it does when you prevent them from getting access to hormone therapy. I think there is a misconception around people who are not trans about how just wait till you're older, kind of thing, and or don't meddle in puberty, kind of just some strict, some hetero blockheaded understandings of what it is to be trans. So what does that mean to prevent or to grant and to give gender affirming care to kids, to young people under 18?
Yeah. And, I think that there's a lot of people, even people that are more liberally minded, that don't have, the full picture of what it means to transition as a kid, what it means to transition as a teenager, and the importance of, affirmative care and a strong support system around them. And so, several transgender people will end up waiting until they are adults, and that works for some people. But several will start experiencing extensive gender dysphoria in their young childhoods. And this is fairly common. It happens. And whenever a kid younger than puberty transitions, all that is them changing their hair, changing their clothes, and using maybe a different name and pronouns. There's no medical component to it at all. Once that kid gets to the age of puberty, what will usually happen, and I've spoken to many families, is they will have already had quite a psychological support team. They'll have doctors, they're speaking with specialists, and with their care team that they have built up and their plan that they've set out over probably the course of several years, they will eventually start on blockers, puberty blockers, which are reversible. Once they've started on puberty blockers, it will buy them 3 or 4 more years, and they can get into their teenage years. And if somebody has been living as their gender for 5, 6, 10 years, and they've been on blockers, they've been through several years of therapy, then in their mid-teenage years, they will be allowed to start their puberty based on whatever their gender identity is. So, for a trans feminine person taking estrogen, trans masculine person taking testosterone. All of this to say, though, is that the effects, and there have been many studies about this recently, the effects of allowing a transgender teenager to start on gender-affirming care are tremendously positive. They are so beneficial to these teens. Their suicidality, which the suicide rate in the trans population is extremely high. It is one of the highest rates of any sort of group of people that exists in the United States, because it is a terrifying experience to know that you are a particular gender and to see your body completely betray that. And so whenever you can give them affirming care, they have found that the suicide rate drops by 73%. It is the most effective thing. If somebody is transgender, it is the most effective thing you can do to a teenager to reduce their suicide rate. And not only that, 73%. And so they had a study, and this one just made me cry because I realized the implication of it. They had a study where they looked at a large group of transgender youth, and they looked at the ones that were allowed to get on gender-affirming care and the ones that were not allowed to get on gender-affirming care. It was like 9,000 people total. And they found that in the 4,500 bucket that were not allowed to get on transgender care, there were 600 more suicide attempts. And then I started thinking about that, and it's like, these are people that aren't going to be with us. These are people that literally are gone. And then I started thinking, this is just a sample. This is just a little 9,000 person sample. You think about the hundreds of thousands of transgender youth in America. And this is a large amount of people that that their lives are under threat. And I've seen personally, I've met many transgender kids and many transgender youth, and to see the joy in these people's lives, and to see the happiness and the ability to just grow up and be, just like any other person that they want to be, and to have that agency in their life, it's tremendous. It makes their life, it's life-changing for them.
Yeah. And I wanted to, the person who has a huge role to play, obviously, is our parents. And that can make or break your child, whether you support them or not. And help them explore. Two things before we go into parents, because I just wanted to say, I said hetero blockheaded, but I just meant cis blockheaded, I think.
Of course, no, of course.
But then I also wanted to underline what you're saying, which is that puberty blockers do just that. They're not saying you'll never go through puberty ever. It's just a blocker. And so if you're like, this is what I need in this moment, and then whatever becomes clearer to you, you want a complete transition, or you do want to transition or not, that is, that's not a forever block on your puberty. And actually, just before we talk about parents, I did want to ask about, I'm struck by the language, and you've done such a great job covering this, so thank you and hats off. And I'm just so glad, again, we have folks like yourself. I've heard of gay conversion therapy, and I haven't heard of the de-transing. I've never heard that phrase before, but in these extremist organizations are floating the idea of people who want to de-trans, and how there's you want to de-transition. And they float stats 80 to 90% of trans kids reverse their decision. What is wrong with that stat that they float?
Yeah. So this is very similar. You mentioned the gay conversion therapy stuff. And if you remember, and a lot of the younger people might not remember this, but if you grew up in the 90s and you saw the gay rights movement, you would remember the ex-gay movement. And that was a big deal, how they would parade the ex-gays, the people that, you know, I was gay, I'm no longer gay. And because I went through this form of therapy or whatnot. Yeah. And we now know that most of those people have actually become, you know, started identifying as gay again. The deal with the 80 to 90% detransition rate that is often cited, and every time it is, I will ping all of the legislators with the papers that show exactly why it's wrong, is those rates were studied in the 1990s. And anybody that knows anything about transgender history and the acceptance of transgender people in the United States knows that trans youth were not allowed in the 1990s. The first person, I believe, to legally transition as somebody under 18, I believe it was Nicole Maines. If she wasn't the first, she was one of the earliest, and that was in 2003. And that was in, I think it was Vermont or Maine. Mm-hmm. And that was a very famous case. There's a book about it called I Am Nicole. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. But these stats of the 80 to 90% rate were built in a time where transition was impossible. They were also built around essentially calling any gender non-conforming person trans. So these are old guidelines based on 1980s, 1990s guidelines. Those guidelines today, the vast majority of people in those cohorts would not even be considered transgenders. So, you know, for instance, they would consider somebody, a boy who played with dolls, as trans in that sort of study. And so, of course, that person is going to desist. The other thing, though, that is terrifying about the statistic is that if one of the goals that they're trying to pursue right now through a new form of conversion therapy called gender exploratory therapy is to essentially try to, and they're using a name specifically to make it sound good, but here's what they do. They'll take a transgender youth, 11, 12, 13-year-old, and they'll say, we'll give you puberty blockers after we try all these other things. And let's see like if all these other things, the real reason for you being trans. So they'll go to like anxiety, depression, etc. And this sounds perhaps like a good idea, but what they're doing, they will never give you those puberty blockers. They will blame you being trans on everything else. They'll wait 3, 4, 5 years through this gender exploratory therapy, kind of like crisis pregnancy centers, like we had talked about before. Right. And the goal is to get that person far enough into puberty to where they feel like there's just no turning back and they have to live with their bodies as it is today. And they've gone through lots of depression, lots of trauma, lots of anxiety. And often these people, you know, it's psychologically damaging for them. Many of them will still be in that high suicide rate camp. And others will appear to detransition or desist. And then later on in life, decide to transition, you know, in the future.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting. So yeah, I mean, I was reading also that like if a man liked to cross dress, he was immediately labeled back in the day as trans. And that was sort of like, right. So the lumping of that 90% is just utter garbage.
So recent studies have shown that the actual number is between 2 and 6%. And it's really interesting. If you look at the National Center for Transgender Equality survey in 2015, they showed that of the 2 to 6% that do detransition, more than half will retransition in the future. And then of that other less than half, so the 40% of the 2% of those people, that small bucket, the vast majority of those cite lack of family acceptance, lack of social support, lack of, you know, discrimination as their main reason for detransition. So even among the people that do detransition and do detransition permanently, the main reason that it happens, by their own words, is nobody was supporting me. I was being discriminated against. I was facing violence. Which is
effectively the Republican strategy.
Exactly.
I mean, they're fine with that.
They want to return to that. That's the whole point. They want to go back to the 80 to 90% detransition rates because that's how they were in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. It was impossible to transition. In fact, that 10% of people still transitioned based on those guidelines and those timelines should say something because it was absolutely hostile. You couldn't do it. It was so hard.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to parents and then we'll close out. But in Ohio recently, and you were live tweeting the discussion over their, you know, HB 454 bill. And a legislator is asking a parent don't have the parent's name, but asking a parent, like, did you take your kid to therapy? And the parent says yes. And then I immediately pulled my kid, who she like basically misgenders. She's a parent of a trans daughter, keeps on referring to the trans daughter as he, and says, no, I pulled my daughter because the therapist was supporting her too much. So just take a look, because Erin was live tweeting this earlier.
Madam Chairwoman, and to the representative, I just have a quick question for you. Yes, ma'am. So I wanted to know if you would be able to elaborate on your child's experience with therapy, and then how, because you talked about it a little bit, but I just want a little bit more detail, just, the experience with therapy, and then, how that may have helped your child, come up with the decisioning to not, transition right now. So if you could elaborate on that.
To the chairwoman and the representative. Actually, I pulled him out of therapy because the therapist wanted me to immediately start him on hormones and was affirming and would not explore any of his underlying mental health issues.
So nope, didn't even wait for the therapy to kick in. Just completely pulled the kid out as soon as the therapist was too affirming. Anyway, your reaction.
Yeah. So, and thank you for playing that clip. She later would actually go on to say that she then brought her, I don't know the pronouns, because unfortunately following these people, we can't speak to their kids, right? But brought her kid to several other therapists who said the same thing. And so she just decided not to pursue therapy at all. And, watching all of these hearings today and last week, it was extremely sad, because you could see how all of these families were struggling with, or how all these kids are probably struggling with these parents that probably put them through a lot of trauma. And I actually, somebody got in touch with me and found out that their mother had spoken at one of these hearings under an alias, and only found out because of my account.
Wow.
And didn't realize that, that his mother was speaking under an alias, watched it and was furious and was like, this is not true to my experience, and like, this put me through a lot of trauma. And we're not hearing from the kids. We're not hearing from their children. And from everything that I've heard and all the people that I've spoken to, it's really sad.
Yeah. Oh my God, awful. I mean, this is like, I'm just also reminded of the white woman who's like biracial son, she thought is like, got radicalized by critical race theory. And she's like, now he identifies as Black. I hate this. It's just like the same awful parenting. But I did want to ask you about like good parenting. Like, how can parents and how are parents supporting their trans daughters and sons? Like, what does that look like?
I have met so many good parents, and to see good parenting, kind of, it makes me feel really emotional, because I know that I was never going to be able to transition as a teen, as a youth, and I've had issues with my own parents in that same respect that a lot of these other kids have had, very similar issues, and good parenting. I know parents of trans kids, and they will go to the end of the earth and back for their kids. They will fight for their kids. They will show up to these court hearings. They'll show up to the legislative hearings. They will stand there. They will protest. They will speak whenever allowed. And in terms of taking care of their kid, they are their children's biggest support system. Their kids thrive because of their acceptance, because of their ability and their willingness to trust the experts, trust their kid, to affirm their kid, to believe their kid, and to give their kid that faith in that time of day. I know a parent that was in Alabama, and in Alabama they just passed this felony ban. Mm-hmm. And I was in touch with her, and she was terrified. She's like, my daughter is 12. She's going to be, she's on blockers. She's going to eventually start hormone therapy. If this happens, like, she has been living as herself for years, and this will detransition her in school. And, her daughter is thriving. Her daughter is intellectually, emotionally whole and strong. And, she's a computer programmer, and she has friends, and she has activities and sports. And so, I had gotten together a GoFundMe for her, and she's since been able to leave Alabama and go to Massachusetts. And, seeing that this parent literally uprooted her entire life and moved across the country just so that her daughter could live a regular childhood that isn't under threat and under attack by a bunch of legislators.
Yeah, that's huge. And it kind of reminds me of what you said earlier about like how there should be resettlement. There should be money available. There should be resources, because not everyone can do that, even if they wanted to provide for their kids. Alabama to Massachusetts, that's it's a lot more expensive, I think, to live in Massachusetts than it is to live in Alabama.
It's a big move.
It's a big move, but that's incredible that you did that work and helped raise that money. Erin, is there anything else we should know you want to add?
This isn't going to stop. This doesn't stop this year. This doesn't stop, in the off season. It doesn't stop in the off legislative cycle. And there is room for every single person to do something, even if it's small. Even if it's just acting in your own state, getting to know your state legislator, your local legislator, and talking about all the things that we've spoken about today. So things like passing safe state laws, passing non-discrimination acts, passing bills that ban discrimination in sports and in schools, passing bills that make your state a safe state for people to flee to. And then if you're even one of those states that have already proposed being a safe state, trying to talk to them about helping these refugees from Texas and Alabama. I think that together we can all talk at the state level. And I really strongly, I want to say that like the state level is where all of this is happening right now. And so even if you're ideologically opposed to like national elections, and I have issues with national elections right now, our national leaders are failing us tremendously, but like play in the states, get to know your legislators, get to know the people that are going to make these laws at the local level. And that's where you can make the biggest impact.
Absolutely. seeing that of the overriding of a veto happened by one vote.
No
in
question.
Kansas. So that's saving kids and lives and helping trans youth feel seen, which they need to feel seen and represented equally in this fucking country. Erin Reed, thank you so much. Everybody, please follow Erin on Twitter at Erin in the Morn. And then in Erin's bio, you can go to the map that you've created for all kinds of health resources in terms of places that offer what am I trying to say?
The hormone therapy map, yes. And
the hormone therapy map, yes. Informed consent. That's what we've learned, children.
Correct.
Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for being here. Please come back and keep us updated as we all get in this goddamn fight.
Anytime at all.
All right, take care. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for being here. Oh, here I am. I'm back. This is me. This is now me. Thanking then me ever the previous me. Anyway, thanks guys for sticking around. That was such a good show. Thanks to Jaye McBride. Thank you to Erin Reed. And there is more show. Specifically, Jay and I are talking about comedy, transphobia, Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle, Netflix. And she's got a Dave Chappelle story you don't want to miss. Bitchuation Room. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. You gotta be there. You gotta hop to it. And make sure, if you are a patron, you get a whole special RSS feed. It's like rainbow colored, very, very cute. And I hope everyone has a good week. I will see you in 2 weeks. Taking next week off to go on a honeymoon. So please pray for good weather. I just looked at the weather and I was like, fuck. Maybe a little rainy. Why? I just want a tan. These are my problems. Anyway, thanks to everyone who works on this show, to Paige Omek, to Maximilian Inhofe, to Alexandra Orness. Thank you to everyone who's become a $10 or more patron. Next week, I will do the fart song. Shout all y'all out. Will not sleep on any of the Twitch subs or any of those super chats. We'll be taking good note. So thank you for supporting this show. And until next time, fight the power. Fuck the patriarchy, and don't just bitch about it. Be about it. Bye.